Hello, everyone. This is Lauren Steiner. Welcome to tonight's edition of The Robust Opposition. This is a show that I just decided to do about 2 hours ago when I read that the paid family and medical leave plan was today dropped from the Build Back Better social spending reconciliation bill. With me to discuss this new development and all the developments of what has happened to this bill is Keaton Weiss, referred to by a lot of other more notable podcasters as a friend of the show. He's been on my show, I've been on his show, and so he was the first person I thought to talk about these developments because I was on his show a couple of weeks ago when the bill started to get whittled down, and now it's whittled down to almost nothing. We know that it was supposed to be a $6 trillion bill. We know that even Joe Manchin back in January said it should be a $3, $4, $5 trillion bill. And Joe Biden, adopted a lot of Bernie's programs. They never really talked about negotiating down from 6 trillion to 3.5 trillion. They just went to that. So that actually became the new starting point. They always allowed them to refer to it as a $3.5 trillion bill, as opposed to a $350 billion bill a year, which when in comparison to the latest defense bill of $748,000 is half of that. And this was the framing that they chose to use. And so community college was cut out. Even it was supposed to be, Bernie, of course, wanted free public college and university, but this bill had free public college. That got cut out. There was no cancellation of student debt. I don't know if that was ever in the bill, but, Warren was trying to get Biden to cancel at least 50, which would be 50,000, which would be insufficient. There was a clean energy, I forget the second E, what that stood for, CEEP program, which was going to basically pay fossil fuel companies to use cleaner sources. And this was considered to be, even though it's like a market-based mechanism, it was considered to be much more effective than a carbon tax or cap and trade. That got cut from the bill. I don't know if the Civilian Conservation Corps is in there or not. That was something that the Sunrise Movement wanted. Apparently, they still have pre-K, universal pre-K. They got rid of Medicare expansion, which is a far cry from Medicare for all. All they wanted to do was give seniors dental, vision, and hearing benefits. That's out. They wanted to allow Medicare to negotiate with Big Pharma. That's out because of Kristen Sinema. I mean, there's like nothing left in there. And I think, and I know you agree with me, that progressives should just vote no. Is there anything else that I left out that's been cut from the bill?
Well, they just announced this evening, which I suppose was the impetus for you wanting to go live, that they're cutting out the paid medical and family leave. The paid leave started out as 12 weeks of paid leave. Then it was negotiated down to 4 weeks of paid leave, and now it's back down to 0 weeks of paid leave, which makes the United States one of 8 countries in the world not to guarantee paid leave. And so, we could talk about the specifics of how this bill got watered down. I think the paid leave, how that got sort of taken out of the bill over time is a perfect metaphor for how the rest of it has gone. And there was a Bernie Sanders town hall the other night where he had AOC on and he had a few other people on, and they were talking about, how the media has not done a good job educating people about what's in the bill, blah, blah, blah. I believe AOC said something to the effect of, all these special interests want us to give up. They want us to stop fighting. They want us to sort of throw in the towel. They want us to be uninformed about these things. And look, we could talk about Sinema. We could talk about Manchin. We could talk about the Blue Dog Caucus in the House. We could talk about all these other forces. We've been talking about them for weeks. I've been covering it for the last couple months on my show. At a certain point, it falls to the progressives to do what they were sent there to do. At this point, we, the progressives in America, have done our job. We've done our job by electing enough progressives to the House to stop a shitty bill from passing. Now, did we do our job as well as I wish we did? No. I wish we had elected Bernie Sanders, right? I wish we had 80 AOCs in the House. But you know what? We have enough. We have enough. There are enough there to stop a bad bill. Jayapal organized about 16 who said we will not vote for the bipartisan package unless it passes alongside the Sanders reconciliation package. 16 is more than enough. I think the Democrats' current majority is something like 4 or 5. So all you need is 6. So we did our job. We put these people there. It's now on them to vote no on this trash bill, this insultingly horrible bill.
Yeah.
They have to vote no now. And don't put the onus on us. Don't tell us to keep fighting, keep voting, keep organizing. Bullshit. We put you that you are there right now. We did our job for now. Right now, you have to do what you were put there to do. You have to do your job now. And if you vote for this piece of garbage, then it is your failing, not ours.
Yeah.
We did our job.
Now, my friend Scott Farley here says we don't have enough to pass a good bill. And yes, of course, we know that that's the case. But the point is not passing a good bill. The point is the progressives showing some backbone, being like the Republicans, being like Manchin and Sinema, and saying we're not going to vote for this bill that offers people nothing. I mean, Cenk Uygur here tweeted, Democrats drop paid family leave. This bill now sucks. Democrats are total losers. Hashtag vote no. And Escobar, who that's the handle. I don't know if it's a he or a she, someone I follow on Twitter, writes, how low can you go? How low can you go? I'm waiting for the bill to be a blank sheet of paper. And it's true. I mean, it's basically, it's basically getting to be nothing. And somebody in this Facebook group where I posted this show writes, voting no is tempting, but it seems that's cutting off your nose to spite your face and sink Democrats' chances in the 22 and 24 election. And I wrote, if they don't pass a bold plan and voting rights, they have no chance anyway. So I know that you know that this is true. It's just so funny that people are still so snowed by this, it's like vote blue no matter who, anything's better than Trump. It's the variation of that same mentality. But now it's not even crumbs. I mean, what they're talking about, the only health care is more ACA subsidies. And we know that only benefits the insurance companies.
Look,
go ahead. Well, I was going to say, I want to bring in Faisal Kahn here, who I met through the North Carolina Medicare for All Coalition. He is part of the Carolina Peace Center. And he's in Washington, D.C. right now, where he marched with Reverend Barber. And Reverend Barber has been really working hard on all elements of this bill, doing marches in West Virginia. He just had this bus go to D.C. today, 3 different places, I think Charlotte, Raleigh, and another place. He was working on the $15 minimum wage, Medicare expansion. So I want to bring in Faisal Kahn right now, who we can see has the Capitol behind him. Great backdrop, Faisal.
Oh,
good
wow.
for you.
My set seems kind of shitty now.
Hey, Lauren, Keaton, and everybody else. Thank you so much, Lauren. So I just want to let you know I have very little battery left, but I'll try to sum it up. I've been here for almost 3 days now. And I think that we are trying our level best not to compromise on this bill and negotiate, because personally, I feel that if we go ahead and compromise, that's Democrats, with the Democrats, then I think this is going to be a huge setback for not only for progressive, but I think for the whole country. I think that at some point we have to take a stand, and I think this is the time to do it. Unfortunately, Manchin, we had a protest last week. I was here at his yacht outside. Sorry, it's a little bit loud here. They're playing a kind of a kickball. We had a protest outside his yacht at the wharf. People were on their kayaks trying to protest. So, he's much more predictable where he stands. But with Sinema, I think this is even more unpredictable. She just, keeps maneuvering left to right. Remember, she was a progressive in the beginning, but I think her conscience just got corrupted by the big, heavy, dark money coming into her campaign financing. So, We just have to keep on making phone calls. We got to keep advocating. We got to keep writing our congressional leaders and Senate leaders.
Okay.
And I think we just need to stay put. We cannot compromise, because I think then it's going to send out a really strong wrong message to the party and also to the country as well. Go ahead.
Okay, but make
how
phone
many-
calls to who? Because the thing that I'm worried about here is that we're going to call Manchin and Cinema as if they give a damn what we have to say. Meanwhile, what we have to worry about right now, as far as I can see, is Jayapal folding, Ro Khanna folding. That's the most important thing right now, is to call the progressives and say, do not sign this piece of garbage bill. Because we could talk about the centrists all we want. We know who they are. They're scum. They're bought and paid for filth and scum.
Right.
Now, it is the task of the people who we thought were these champions of ours to actually go to bat and say, no, we're not signing this. We will take nothing before we take this. Because if you take this, then what you forfeit is your caucus being taken seriously for the next decade. After the ACA fight, all the lefties in the House got rolled. Obama went to them and said, you have to sign on to a bill with no public option. And they did it. They did it. They bowed their head. They were brought to heel. And for the next decade, we have tried to work to put enough progressives there to the point where we could be taken seriously. And if they fold on this right now, then we're going to be right back where we were in 2009. That's what I'm most worried about in the short term.
Let Faisal speak.
I know. I just had to finish that. Sorry.
He's losing his battery.
Oh, that's all right. I'm sorry. Your battery's done.
Very emotional time. So the thing is that I completely agree. That's why I said we need to keep calling all our congressional leaders and the senators, regardless, to stay focused on what our demands are and not compromise, negotiate. That's what I said in the beginning. Regardless, whatever it's taking, the centrists, including Jayapal or anybody else, need to understand that their seat is in jeopardy if they, willing to fold, compromise, and sign this bill. And we should send out a very strong message. Now, keep in mind that the numbers are increasing from the progressive side. Numbers are increasing. Eventually, we are going to be able to get things done. Right now, it's in a critical stage, and Biden administration wants to get this bill signed before he leaves the country, goes to Europe, So he wants to sort of look good and get this done. He's been coming to the Congress, a few times now, last 2 weeks. And not only that, we have our judicial court. We're outside the Supreme Court today and yesterday. That's also at stake now, with the abortion case coming out of, I think, from Mississippi next week, and week after it's a Texas bill. So that's also Roe versus Wade is really online as well. So there's so many things. But I think, we're at a juncture now in our history, in our time now, is that we cannot compromise. And no matter what, we're not looking for crumbs anymore. And that's what we've been negotiating. That's what's been happening for decades and decades. We're just getting crumbs. And this is time that we have to be very adamant, and we have to hold our position very strong that these are the demands. This is the bill that needs to pass. If not, we're not budging in. And I agree with what Keaton, what you're saying. The frustration is now really starting up. I mean, I know I was in Georgia for the runoff election, and there are people that I came across that had never voted because they have lost trust in our system. I come across a lot of young people who just didn't want to vote because it's the same old story. And, it's unprecedented to have 2 Democrat senators elected in the state of Georgia, and it's not going to happen again if we're going to continue this. I mean, I really feel that the Democrats are in trouble in 2022. Forget about 24. But I think Democrats can show solidarity to the progressives by, taking a position and saying, we're not going to sign this, we're not going to compromise, and let it go.
Right. And they should vote no on both bills, this reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill. Now, tell me this, Faisal, how many people were marching with Reverend Barber and you today?
Well, we had 2 events today. What we had in the morning, Reverend Barber, we had a press conference at the Capitol. Behind me, you can see it on the other side. We had about 40 people. It was a very interfaith. We had a rabbi, we had a pastor, we had an imam, we had doctors, we had people that have been hurting really bad from Arizona, people have been affected by healthcare. So after that, we had about 400 to 500 people march in the afternoon. So there were 3 events going on. They kind of merged together at the Supreme Court. There was a civil disobedience. It's about 30 people got arrested. It was all peaceful and nonviolent. So I'd say in the afternoon, about 350 to 400 people showed up.
Yeah, now I want to talk about these tactics because, the other day it was either the New York Times or the Washington Post wrote an article on how West Virginians would suffer from what Joe Manchin has cut from this program. And
That's
I
right.
was thinking to myself of, you know, how activists come out. We always come out. The Sunrise Movement comes out. Move On gets a group to come out. Reverend Barber gets a group to come out. But we haven't really seen a lot of ordinary citizens just come out en masse. I mean,
Yeah.
with the exception of the George Floyd protests last summer. The last time I think about it, it was 2011, first with, you know, the Occupy movement. But even before that, in the April, I think it was, of 2011, in the capital of Madison, Wisconsin, you had people from all over the state. And I remember, you know, my heart started beating when John Nichols from The Nation, who was talking about it, I was at a function for Progressive Democrats of America where he spoke about how the farmers were coming in on the tractors and they were all converging on the Capitol. And I remember watching, you know, Rachel Maddow cover it before she became horrible. And they were interviewing a woman in the private sector, because you remember the whole purpose of those protests were Governor Walker was going to cut collective bargaining. And these people were there to try to save their collective bargaining. And this woman was interviewed and she said, I don't understand why these people get these benefits. I don't have them. Instead of asking why I don't have these benefits, she was begrudging the union worker. And that's really what's happened right now. So I'm thinking, if they did that in West Virginia, if they had ordinary people from the entire state converge on his office or something like that, that would be so much more effective than a bunch of activists kayaking up to his yacht. And I'm just want to ask the both of you about these tactics.
Yeah, so I think one is that, for example, in the Manchin, we had a lot of people from West Virginia, you know, trying to get some more attention on Manchin. There were a lot of people that were from his state, of course, addressing their grievances and trying to make some noise. And you said something that I've been talking to people a lot, you know, lately, is that, you know, more the people, greater the impact. More the people, greater the impact. We need mass scale rallies and protests, obviously all peaceful, nonviolent. Just like we had like Women's March. This place, this area right here needs to be packed, you know. And I'm not seeing that kind of energy that we saw 4 years ago, you know. And I'm afraid that this is exactly what happened in Obama years, that once Democrats get elected, get into power, you know, everybody just kind of goes back to their, you know, all the centrists, all the moderate liberals, you know, just kind of go back to their thing. But Trump is out of the picture, so, you know, we're okay. Our sense of security is not under threat. You know, our sense of prosperity is not under threat. Our privilege is not under threat. So let's just, you know, keep on moving with the status quo. And this is really troubling to me, is that we need to see more people come out. People doesn't have to show up in Washington, D.C. They can do in their own respective areas and towns. We need people, like hundreds and thousands of people coming out and protesting and demanding. You know, this is what's going to change. And that's the thing. The elected officials behind me, they know, you know, I mean, they know it's only 30, 40, 300 people showing up. They know that we're going to be there for a couple of hours and they're going to go away. And so what? We need to have consistency. This is what's going to change things, is consistency, whether it's advocacy, whether we're calling our elected officials, whether we're visiting them, or whether people coming on the street, you know, holding these peaceful rallies and protests. I mean, This is all what we can do. But I do believe and agree with you that we need more people coming out, you know, and merging together, building these large-scale coalitions. And that's what's really frustrating to me, that after what we've seen last 4 years, you would think people would have realized, because I don't think Trump was a rock bottom. I tell people Trump was just a wake-up call, you know, and people are just not understanding that. And that to me is really worrisome. It worries for our children, our grandchildren, you know, what they're going to face. So, you know, all I can say to you and everybody else is watching that is just to keep on doing what you can, stay engaged, you know, and stick to your principles, stick to the rights of the people, whether it's the voting rights, you know, whether it's reproductive rights, whether it's, you know, our judicial rights, our healthcare, our affordable housing, you know, paid leave. Just cannot compromise, because you compromise one thing, then they know they can always do that, you know, and you can always budge in. So today, tonight, tomorrow is a time to take a stand and say no means no. You know, either we get all of this or we don't do it anything. You know?
All right.
I gotta go.
I'm gonna let you go.
Thank you,
Keep
Laura.
fighting. Enjoy DC.
Yes. Well, yes, it is nice here, but it's a lot going on here. I can tell that, you know, it was good to see a lot of people coming out, different groups, but I think definitely a lot more people need to come out. If they can't come to DC, they definitely need to start holding events in their own hometowns, just like we were doing 3-4 years ago. You know, we need to have I mean, I believe this very strongly. More the people, greater the impact. And
Great.
that's all there. Thanks
Thank
so much.
you so much, Faisal.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank
inviting
you.
All right. That was Faisal Kahn from the Carolina Peace Center, who is in Washington, D.C. now with Reverend Barber and the Poor People's Campaign. So what's your comment about this Keaton, so we see that there's a lot of union fights going on right now. Christian Smalls, I was the first YouTuber to have him on my show right after his action at Amazon, at the beginning of the pandemic. He is just organizing. I think they had a vote Monday. I don't know how it went. Do you know how it went?
They're gonna try to unionize that warehouse. I think they just filed.
Yeah, they had a vote on Monday. And, we know that John Deere workers are on strike, Kellogg's workers are on strike. And we know that a lot of, minimum wage workers are on strike, and they're calling it the Great Resignation. They're not going to work, even though they have, thousands of jobs now. So in a way, there is some sort of mass action, but it's more in what would you say, like in a workplace situation than on this political level?
Well, yes. I mean, we talked to Joey Holtz, who went viral recently for running that whole quote unquote labor shortage experiments, where he applied to 60 jobs in 30 days and got one interview. And we talked to him about this on our show. And this very topic came up. So Faisal just talked about the Women's March. Why isn't there a Women's March scale, mobilization for this reconciliation bill, right? And to me, it's fairly simple. Like issues of dollars and cents, especially issues that involve taxing rich people and redistributing those resources to poor and working class people, don't carry the same cultural capital that a lot of these movements centered around social issues do. Texas abortion ban, perfect example. Look at the cultural response to that. Look at the uproar about that. Rightfully so. I'm not saying there shouldn't have been a big reaction to that. But you had celebrities tweeting about that, right? You had all these blue check marks talking about how we should boycott the state of Texas, right? How many of those people have tweeted about the John Deere workers or the Kellogg's workers? None of them. You know why? Because they're all fucking rich and they don't care about this shit. And that is the power base of the Democratic Party now, is these, Whoopi Goldberg, fucking Alyssa Milano, Joy Behar, who like to virtue signal about how horrible it is that there's only one abortion center in Texas and now it's 6-week ban and everything like that. And yes, they're right about all that. I'm not arguing any of that. But where are they when it comes to issues that affect union workers? Nowhere, because they don't care about union workers. And
right.
and expressing any concern for people's well-being at their place of work is just not the kind of virtue signaling that they like to engage in. They don't feel like great people tweeting out about that the way they do tweeting out about a women's march or something like that. So that's why there's not this mass mobilization. Now, in terms of the actual bill itself and in terms of the actual content of the bill, it's very obvious to me now that the ship has sailed in terms of getting a good bill. This is now this. I don't think you're never going to build back better, to borrow a phrase, to the point where this is a bill worth passing. At this point, it's a question of who comes out of this with egg on their face, who is embarrassed by this process. If the progressives sign this thing, they are the ones who get embarrassed. They are the ones who are marginalized, just as they were in 2009 after the ACA fight.
Yeah.
What they must then be willing to do is they must be willing to embarrass Joe Biden, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, all those blue dogs in the House. And we talk about Manchin and Sinema as if they're the only ones. 8 Senate Democrats voted against Bernie Sanders' minimum wage add-on when they were passing the bill back in March. That's probably the real number.
Yeah.
Like, if we elect one more Democrat, then we can cancel out Sinema or Manchin. Or if we elect 2 more. Well, they got John Tester, conservative Democrat from a deep red state. So Manchin and Sinema, if the Democrats add 1 to their margin, which they're not going to, but if they do, will become Manchin, Sinema, Tester.
Right.
Add another one, it becomes Manchin, Sinema, Tester, Coons. Right? You can go down the line. Those 8 Democrats who voted down the minimum wage they would probably be there if push came to shove to block the kind of reforms that are in the $3.5 trillion version of the package. So let's stop talking about Manchin and Sinema as if they are the only problem. We just need to elect one or two more. Right now, the task is the major test here is, do progressives establish themselves as a formidable force to be reckoned with in years to come? If they sign this thing, they are not a formidable force. If they sign this thing, they are the same pushovers that they were 12 years ago, and this was all for nothing. That is the key that everybody must understand right now. This is no longer about getting a good bill. This is now about who gets embarrassed at the end of this process. And if we're not willing to embarrass Joe Biden and tank the Democrats and tank whoever they run in a few years, then none of this means anything, because that's what holding the line means. Holding the line means we're going to get something good or we're not getting anything at all, and we are willing to live with that. Because Joe Manchin is willing to live with that. Kristen Sinema is willing to live with that. You think they care about the Democrats' prospects in the midterms? Of course not. If they did, they'd sign on for the whole thing. The whole thing is very popular.
Okay, well, all right, let me get into wording edgewise here. So, yes, I agree with you. I've been saying for a long time that, the progressives need to vote no on this, and they need to vote no on both bills. And I was worried that while there were still some things in there, that they weren't going to do that. It was my prediction that they were going to want to give their people something, like in the CARES bill. I remember working with Kai Newkirk from Democracy Spring, and before that 99 Rise, which came out of Occupy LA, to organize the first socially distanced in-person protests of the HEROES Act, when Jayapal was trying to corral the progressives to vote no on that unless they made that more progressive. And we did something. We actually put X's on the ground outside of Jimmy Gomez's office, and we wore masks. And it was, we were trying to get a bunch of people in different congressional districts to do it. It wasn't very big, but it was kind of a good idea and very newsworthy if the media, wanted to cover these kinds of things, which they don't. But they don't now have anything in this bill that is even remotely crumbs. It's like this comment from Escobar that I read before. Let me see. I've got a friend who is in there right now that I want to bring her in. Rachael Rose Luckey is a friend of mine from Los Angeles. She is running for the city council right now. And if elected, she would be the first transgender person ever elected to the city, the Los Angeles City Council, that is. I'm not sure about any other city councils. But I'd like to bring her in because she's been very active in her Democratic Party. And I would like to hear her perspective. And I hope she goes off of her picture and gives us some video. But of course, she doesn't have to if she doesn't want to. How you doing, Rachael?
I'm doing good. Just, jumped in here at the last minute. And I'm sorry about the video. I am not camera ready.
Okay. What is your opinion from the city level, from a very big city level? What I know you guys are working on some super local issues, but what is the talk in LA right now about this bill and about the Democrats and about all these programs that are getting cut from the bill?
I haven't heard a whole lot, on the local level as to, how the federal legislation it will or will not affect us. I think on the local level, we're kind of waiting to see what the federal government is going to do, because, a lot of that money that they've been talking about and throwing the numbers around about will go to, cities such as Los Angeles, and to help us initiate programs that hopefully will raise our low-income communities and help folks on the ground. But until that is all ironed out. But in listening to what Keaton had to say, I would say that all politics is local, and that I don't disagree with what he was saying, but I would put the caveat of coming from, the Stonewall Democratic Club, I was an officer there, and I did step away from that kind of politics, party politics. But what I would say is that we came close. There was a big progressive push when Kimberly Ellis went up against Eric Bauman, and whether or not you consider Kimberly a progressive or not, there was some debate about that. But I think in the background, what we saw was a lot of folks willing to vote for and support progressives and progressive values. And
then she got cheated by the California Democratic Party. And I'm sure you know that just on Sunday, they completely steamrolled the executive committee. There were 50 members of the executive committee who wanted to ban fossil fuel money from the California Democratic Party. And Rusty Hicks didn't allow them to let that happen. He allowed them to have another committee, even though there already was a committee that voted to do this. And this committee was presenting their results. So were you on that Zoom meeting?
I was not privy to that call, but I did see some of the aftermath from that, from some of the folks that were. But I think the larger point is that we need to have progressives to continue the pressure and run people against, whether it's the chair of the California Democratic Party, the chair of the National Democratic Party, or any Democrat that votes in a way or supports policies in a way that are detrimental to our, what we believe to be, the correct progressive path forward.
Yeah.
And so, somebody like Cinema, I was just reading just before I jumped on here, they're already looking to start raising funds to primary her. And, I'm all for that.
It doesn't really matter, because I don't think she cares about running for re-election. I think she's lining up her next job either with big pharma or private equity.
Well, whatever her goals are, but like what was the 8 or 9 that voted against what was it? You guys just mentioned it. There were 8 or 9 that voted against.
Who voted against Bernie's
minimum wage? Minimum wage. That's
the minimum wage amendment.
We as progressives, we definitely need to single these people out. And
but can I just ask you?
Possibly can, because that's where the levers of power lie.
Well, sure, but I just have to ask you. I mean, I think you make some great points in there about politics being local, and yes, of course, it is like intrinsically good to elect as many progressives as possible, and replace as many of these so-called centrists with as many people as far left as their voters will have them. But I'm once again reminded of one of the first comments we got when we went live about a half hour ago. Scott Farley said, and Lauren, you mentioned this, we don't have enough to pass a good bill. So, no, we don't have enough progressives now to pass the legislation that we want. But in Congress right now, we do have enough progressives to hold up the process until the system bends to their will at least a little bit. And we have enough to basically say, stop this whole thing unless we get some of what we want. And if they sign for a bill like this, which is, once again, an insult, then they are forfeiting that power that we gave them. And they are wasting all of the efforts that we have made to put them there. And so if their answer to that is, well, you just have to elect more of us, I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense, because guess what? We're not going to elect, probably in the next 15, 20, 30 years, we're not going to elect 219 AOCs to the House. We're never going to have that kind of raw power. The only power we will ever have is the same kind of power that the Freedom Caucus had on the right, which is the power to hold up the process until the establishment bends to their will.
Yeah.
That's the only power we're ever going to have in the short term. If you want to say, well, we just got to keep electing more and more and more and more and more, well, guess what? That's going to be a lifetime's worth of work. By
And
then,
we don't
this
have
country
a
will have gone
lifetime.
completely to hell.
I don't disagree with you, Keaton. And if we're talking short term versus long term, you're absolutely correct. Use the power that we have. And
But if they don't use the power that we have, I guess my point is, if they don't use this power that they have, which is the power that we gave them and you gave them and Lauren gave them, then how do they expect to rally the troops to elect more of them? This demand, this rallying cry that we need to elect more and more and more, falls apart under the slightest bit of scrutiny, because, like I've said before, there already are enough of them to extract real results from the system if they hold firm.
Keaton,
If they go along with the party line and say, well, this is a win, okay, we need Biden to have a win before he goes to Europe, then whatever, then you're forfeiting everything. Then nothing means anything at that point.
I think that we can chew gum and walk at the same time, though. I think we can exercise the power that we do have as progressives. And I don't disagree that the progressives up on Capitol Hill need to put the foot down on this. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
But at the same time, we do need to keep our message going, and the benefits of what we're proposing to the American people. But like I said, I think we can chew gum and walk at the same time.
All right.
For sure. But my just point, if I could just make this for 5 seconds, sorry, is that if the progressives who are currently elected now don't do their job and rep the people who put them there, then you're not going to be able to rally support to elect more of them. That's my point.
Right.
All right. Rachel, I'm going to say goodbye to you. I want to try to
All
bring
right.
some
Good
other
to see
people
you,
in.
Lauren.
Thanks
Nice
a
to meet
lot
you,
for
Keaton.
coming on. Good luck.
Thank you,
with
Rachel. It's great
good
to meet
luck
you
with
too.
your race.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, guys, you can join the show. I am not able to post comments from here for some strange reason, but Keaton, maybe you can take that StreamYard link and post it in the comments yourself.
I can't comment either. It's not letting me comment
Can
either.
you comment on the Facebook page?
Yeah, I'm in Facebook. It says I can't comment on this post right now.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not able to do it either.
Because I can comment on my tablet. Can you do it on your tablet?
Let me see if I could do it on my phone.
Yeah,
What do you need me to do? You need me to share this link?
I don't have the link handy. If you have the link, you can do it on your
well, the
tablet.
StreamYard link, I think, is just in my URL. It's just in my browser, right?
Yeah, I think, didn't I send it to you as Facebook message?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, so if you can do that on your tablet, not your desktop.
Right here, now I'm putting this on my... Okay, so I just put that on my Do Dissidents link, and then let me see if I could do it here. Yeah, now it's still...
All right, hold on a second. I sent it to you. Let's see. Well, say something while I do this. I'll figure it out.
All right. Let me just read some of the comments, because we have had quite a few people comment. So, Amanda Nichols says, how about Pelosi holding a closed-door meeting Monday, pressuring House progressives to embrace the corporate win and pretend the bill is good in messaging? How disgusting. It's like someone assaulting you and whispering, just let it happen. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt about that. I think that is a very good point. Look, what the party leadership is going to do here is they are going to try and message out that this was a win for Joe Biden. All the party leadership cares about in doing this is stopping Joe Biden's poll numbers from continuing to sink. They don't care what's in the bill, what's not in the bill. They want to win before he goes to Europe so they can come out and say that we got things done. And if the progressives give them that win, then the centrists in the party get to maintain all of their cachet as the mature, reasonable, responsible deal makers, the pragmatists who can quote unquote get things done, and that the
nothing
lefties
is getting
in the House
done. I don't understand what they're going to say gets done. This infrastructure bill that basically privatizes our infrastructure. I mean, that's a shit bill too.
They'll make up something. They'll trust that the people don't really know and don't really care. I mean, they just want a bill. They want a bill, and they want to be able to say that this is the best we can do. Look, this fits very much into what the core brand of the Democratic Party has been these past few years, which is like, look, lefties go up on stage and they say what they want to do. And then you have some asshole like Joe Biden say, listen, I'm the one who got it done, right? They're the ones who say, we're the ones who get things done. You guys can talk. We're the ones who get things done. And listen, Pramila Jayapal, Rokana, Lauren, I know you text Rokana from time to time. If you could send him a text on my behalf, I would appreciate it.
I said, do not vote for this. I said, vote no for this bill. I said, even Pramila Jayapal, her husband had a stroke the other day, and she posted on her personal Facebook page that, it was not that it was touch and go, but it was just like he had good medical care. So it was fine. And she was doing, by his side the whole time, except for the day that she had to have lunch with Biden, and I was thinking about it, like the kind of pressure that she must be under. And what I was thinking about specifically was that more you get co-opted into the process. And I think back about Dennis Kucinich basically threatening to vote no on Obamacare unless there was a public option there. And then Obama invited him on Air Force One. And after that little meeting, he folded, and if I have him on my show to talk about his new book, which is great, by the way, I'm going to ask him about that little trip on Air Force One. Because that's what I think is happening. When you're Pramila and you're negotiating for this entire caucus and the left, wing of the Democratic Party, you feel like, I don't know, there's not ego trip. That's the wrong word to use. I'm not saying she's egotistical or she thinks she's so important or anything, but the weight of stuff does fall on your shoulders. And it seems like every little, like in a negotiation, like if they give something to her, even if it's not really giving anything, she feels like she's got to give something back. And there's something about that process, I think, that just wears you down. And the longer you stay in that process, the more likely you are to vote for it, because you will have felt psychologically that you helped craft it because you were part of the process. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yes, it does make sense that is where they would be coming from after operating on the inside for so long, which is why it falls to us and Rachael and Faisal to let them know that we see through that and that we will not be offering them an ounce of support ever again. They got 2 strikes on them. As far as I could see, they botched the whole Nancy Pelosi speaker vote. Whether you were on board with the Jimmy Dore forced to vote thing is not the point. The point is they could have extracted something from her in exchange for supporting her for that job. They didn't. They could have done what they were doing up until very recently on this bill, what they did with the minimum wage, which is send that rescue plan back and say, no. We ordered this with a minimum wage increase in it. They didn't do that. That's 2 strikes. Okay. They fold on this. They're done. They're done. We have to say we are done. We are not supporting you ever again. Don't talk to us about, her name escapes me right now. Who's running against Henry Cuellar again? She ran.
Jessica Cisneros?
Yes, exactly. Don't call me to fucking donate to Jessica Cisneros. No. We've elected enough of you now. Now you have to do your jobs. If you don't do your jobs here, don't come to us saying we need to elect more.
Right.
No. This is it. First of all, the country is going to hell. I want everybody to understand that. Like, this is not like everybody acts like we have this time to build all these movements over the course of years and decades. It's not. The country is going to hell. And it's going to slide further into hell in 2022 when the Democrats are going to lose the House, no matter what the result of this bill is. And they're probably going to lose the Senate as well. And so, look, this is the bill. This is the shot. This is your shot to pass legislation. I interviewed Alexander Salmon from the
he was Sludge?
The American Prospect. Excuse me. I couldn't. Their website is a Prospect, but that's the name of the publication. Sorry. And he said, he says basically the Democrats get 1 chance per decade to pass something big.
Yeah.
And this is it. This is the chance. And so, you have to, this is it. You're all in on this. Now,
listen, I want to tell people that I posted the link to the Facebook event. I made a Facebook event for this show so that people could click, they go to that Facebook event, and then it says join the event right there, and that's how you get into the studio here. And if I see you in the studio, I'm assuming you want to comment on the show, and I'll bring you into the show. We've got about 15 minutes left. But I'm thinking, like, you know, we still have people out there that are saying this is the last chance for the Democrats. You know, I posted, the first thing that I posted that just came to my mind when I read this about the medical paid family and medical leave being removed from the bill. I posted, I left that trash party, you know, 4 years ago. And I just have, you know, despite what my friend Rachael says, I don't have any faith that the party can be reformed. I mean, even when Ben Hawk, my friend who was leading that fight to get fossil fuel money out of the California Democratic Party, was so hopeful. I mean, he figured he had 50 members. They had done all the organizing, and they had 50 members of the executive committee that was going to make that decision, ready to vote. And, you know, they outmaneuvered them with parliamentary procedure. They had, you know, first they formed this committee. That's how they did it. And then when they came up for the vote, they said, oh, we're going to throw this to the committee. And that's what happened. And procedurally, they had worked this all out. They had rehearsed it. And then so many of these 50, according to R.L. Miller, who's, you know, chair of the Environmental Caucus, or she was chair of the Environmental Caucus, so many of them caved. And it's exactly what happened when I fought Fran Pavley's bill, SB4, back in 2013. It was a fracking regulatory bill. And I put regulatory in quotes because, A, it didn't really have good regulations. It was just, 30-day notification before they do a frack job, groundwater monitoring before or after if you requested it, knowing what the chemicals were in the fracking fluids, even though we already knew them because they were reported to Henry Waxman's Energy and Commerce Committee, and a study, as if we didn't already know that, you know, fracking is not safe for the environment and for human beings. So we had Food and Water Watch work really hard to get Holly Mitchell to sponsor a fracking moratorium bill. And what Credo Action, because I did a citizens-led campaign, so many of the environmental groups didn't want to go against Fran Pavley because she was considered the best friend environmentalists had in Sacramento because she passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, which was a model for the country that used cap and trade to get, levels down to 1990 levels by 2020. So what happened with that one was I did this petition. I got 20,000 signatures with Move On and Credo. We had a rally with 80 people to deliver them at her office. It still passed. And 2 years later, the results of the studies were, we need more studies. So this is a bullshit tactic. This is happening in the state of California, which is considered one of the most progressive states in the country, and where they control both houses of the legislature with a veto-proof majority, because they need 2/3 to pass a tax there in California. They don't even need Republicans for that because they have that majority, and they still can't get anything with climate. So Ro Khanna is now tweeting all over the place about how he's going to have these hearings in which he's going to have the fossil fuel companies, the executives from the fossil fuel companies at his committee hearing, and he's going to grill them about what they knew and when they knew it. And my point is, so what? What are you going to do about that now? Is that really what you should be focusing on? Is, the opportunity for legislate, and these hearings, it's just an opportunity for them to grandstand. They don't really ask questions. They know exactly what the answers are going to be. They're just kind of showing off for the C-SPAN audience. But speaking of the environment, I have someone here who I don't personally know. His name is Joey Opa. Pronounce your name for me, please.
Ani Mbuju. I'm Ernest Joseph Uppegaard-Peltier III. I'm a candidate for U.S. House, Minnesota, Congressional District 7.
All right. Well, you've been posting a lot of things about the environment, and I'd like you to talk about that. And I first want to say something that I don't know if it was Keaton or Rachael who said it, is that young people are really getting very turned off. And my physical therapist said to me today, they're not going to vote because they really, really care about the climate. They really feel that the boomers gave them a shit environment, and they're going to die off. We're going to die off. We're not going to have to deal with the worst ramifications of it. And, you were talking about the what happened in D.C., led by the indigenous community, people against fossil fuels. I was going to go and cover that, but other stuff came up. So why don't you talk, give your point of view. You've been expressing some very thoughtful things in the chat.
So I'm one of the organizers for the indigenous leadership of the People versus Fossil Fuels. I actually was the MC for our Tuesday's event where we handed over 1 million petitions to the Army Corps of Engineers. And you're right, you know, we watched this bill get gutted for Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema, and, you know, Joe Manchin is one of our coal barons. You know, he gets most of his wealth and his family's wealth off of those coal mines in West Virginia. Richard Ojeda has been huge, calling him out for years on this. We're looking at Biden's Build Back Better plan, and, you know, they gutted over a third of that bill, making it nothing more than crumbs for us. And what's in there is not even worth taking that huge corporate subsidy payout. What I suggest to the House Democrats is step away from this bad faith negotiations from Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. You know, go back, redraft a new bill for the spring, which is around the time that we have our conventions in the Democratic Party, and it will help turn out conventions, and then we can build off of an actual infrastructure bill that Joe Biden promised when he ran for presidency. You know, that's how we get things done. This conflict that would cause between the House and the Senate, if the House Democrats step away, would give Joe Biden a chance to step out of that basement and actually do something. It boosts his poll numbers, which have been tanking over the last month or so, and then they've been sitting dramatically low over his whole entire presidency.
Well, I mean, I think the point is that Joe Biden has seen better days. I mean, I don't know if you watched the CNN town hall with Anderson Cooper, but he was meandering, he was digressing, he was telling old stories from the past, he was stopping himself mid-sentence, saying things like, "I've said enough," kinds of things that he said during the campaign. Anderson Cooper had to keep bringing him back on track. And the fact is, when he is not speaking with a teleprompter, you can see that he's basically sundowning right now. And I saw this during the debates, and I thought it was really cruel, almost to the point of elder abuse, that his wife was putting him through this and letting him run. You know, maybe he thinks he wants to be president, but he's not equipped to be president. And when I think of what, you know, comparing him to somebody like LBJ, and yes, it was pointed out to me that LBJ and FDR and some of these other presidents had way bigger majorities in Congress. He's at this 50-50 thing. But I gotta think there's something that he can do, maybe not to Sinema, because she's like, I think she's an actual sociopath, if you want my opinion. But Manchin is someone you can deal with, and I don't know what you could do with him. I mean, first I was thinking, well, maybe you strip him of his committee assignments. You know, he's head of the Energy Committee, where he gets to dole out all that money to the fossil fuel industry. But maybe if you did that, maybe he would just become a Republican. And he even intimate. Friends of his were quoted as saying that, wait, did you mute yourself? I think you muted yourself, because I didn't mute you. But anyway, friends of his were saying that he was talking about switching parties. And then, of course, he came, you know, out and said, oh, no, I'm not going to switch parties. But he just loved. Yes, yep, I hear you now. All right, you were going to respond, yeah.
What Biden needs to do with Joe Manchin is bring him against his, Attorney General. You know, investigate him and Joe Manchin's daughter for their improper use of campaign money, and then also the money that they're receiving in corporate donations and payoffs. The connections between Joe Manchin's daughter and what was it?
EpiPen?
The EpiPen.
Yeah, EpiPen. And her gouging prices to the extreme. There is tons of evidence
He's off again, I think.
Again. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who has any control over Manchin. I don't know who's, Joe Biden supposedly has a very tight administration there. No leaks from the administration. Everything is orchestrated very well when he's on teleprompter and on message. But something like this, they're just not capable of handling. There's nobody in there that can arm twist and threaten and really show power like an LBJ could. I mean, that's the problem.
FDR didn't do what he did out of the kindness of his heart. He did it because he had mass movements knocking on his door saying, you better do something or we're going to have a massive uprising. And, pointing back early in the conversation about, we are having a current uprising. It's Striketober. Tons of different businesses and unions across the nation are uprising. We had the People versus Fossil Fuels. We had Women's March. We had the Orange Shirt Day. We see these mass movements across the United States, and Joe Biden's not reading the room. And his cabinet is not reading the room. We like to think that, going back to George Bush, the last years of George Bush Jr.'s administration, we like to say that he was controlled by the deep state and they ruled his administration. Well, we see that currently with Joe Biden. He, like you were saying, Laura, he doesn't have the capacities that he once had. He was a profound public speaker, and we've seen over the last 8 years his cognitive decline, which you're right, it bridges on elder abuse to actually have him sit in this rank of office with all this power. And it was a lot of the similar conversations that we had about Donald Trump's capacities with, Joe Biden's capacities on if they're actually there.
Yeah. You want to have anything to say about this, Keaton?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to repeat myself over and over again. And it's nice to meet you, Joey. But look, at this point, we could talk about mass movements and flooding the streets and everything. At this point, this is now going to be resolved perhaps within a matter of days. And in the short term, what we must do is communicate to the progressives who are already there that they will not get any further support from us. And I'm sorry, Joey, I wish you luck in your campaign. But as I was just talking to Rachel, we're not campaigning for guys like you. If they don't do their job, why should I be convinced that you're going to go in there and stand up for us? If we did this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we're just doing this. I'm sorry, man. You seem like a good guy, but I'm not going to tell people to knock on doors for you if the people we just knocked on doors for the past 2 years don't come through here and don't stand up for us here. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And Biden, Manchin, cinema, we talk about Biden and his cognitive decline and this and that. Comparing Biden, all these LBJ comparisons and, we wish he was LBJ, we wish he was FDR. I compare Joe Biden to a albeit much less charismatic version of the George Clooney character in the movie Up in the Air. Anybody recall that film?
Yeah, I do.
He's the guy who gets on the airplane, he flies out on behalf of the company and sits down with the workers and says, we're very sorry, but you're laid off. Joe Biden is that sad bastard company man who goes out and does the bidding of the party bosses. And what the party bosses needed from him in 2020 was to run in the primary to stop Bernie Sanders from taking over the party. Period. They didn't care whether he lost to Trump. That didn't matter. It was weird. A socialist is going to take over the party. We need you to come in and do one more job for the team, one more job for the company before you ride off into the sunset. And that's what he did. And that's his only function as far as I see. I don't know that Joe Biden legitimately wants a good bill. I don't know what he wants. I don't care what he wants. I don't know what Manchin wants or cinema. I don't care. At this point, it's obvious that they are immovable objects. We're not getting a good bill. We're not getting a good bill. Everybody needs to understand that. There is no good bill here. The question is, do progressives maintain some self-respect and some relevance down the road, or do they prove to the centrists that they will be brought to heel under pressure? That's the question.
You know, with the House Democrats, if you're right, if they do, you know, hold their respects and self-integrity and vote no on this bill, it is going to cause a conflict between the House and the Senate. And that does give a moment for Joe Biden to shine if he does choose to actually act, in which it's our jobs in these next few days to push those House Democrats to walk away from this bill and to give them the ammo and the talking points on why this is such a shitty bill. Excuse my language.
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
And that's the only way, like you said, Keaton, is if we embarrass the heck out of the party itself, the party leadership, to actually act. And, you know, focusing on the fact that this bill is now a corporate handout and has ripped away any shred of community governing policies, that is where we need to hammer down at. Because do we really want to face in the midterms, oh, you guys gave a big old corporate handout, a $1.3 trillion corporate handout. What makes you any better?
I
Right,
mean,
but what
it's
they're
like-
betting on, let me just say, what they're betting on is getting something done, because they think the people are so stupid that they could just say, we got something done. And by we, they're going to mean the Joe Biden, Kirsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, Chris Coons, John Tester, centrist Democrats. They're going to tell the country, no, we're not the party of defund the police. We're not the party of Medicare for all. We're not the party of a Green New Deal. We are the party of getting things done in the middle. And if the schmuck progressives in the House sign this bill,
Right.
they are handing that argument to them on a silver platter, and they will never get it back.
Right.
Never
Correct.
get it back. Because this past 10-year project, really starting in 2015 with the Sanders campaign, right? But this past decade of work has been to get our foot in the door, to get a seat at the table. And now we have it. And now we have enough seats at that table to hold the process up until these centrists give us something. And
Well, I
if
wanna
we let
feature-
them roll us now, then it was all for nothing, and we'll never get that credibility back, ever.
I want to feature.
Agreed.
I want to feature my shirt here because I wore this shirt. This is that we wore at the convention. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate in 2016 at the convention, and people who are familiar with my work know that I led the floor demonstration against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So when Elijah Cummings started talking, our cue word was when the first person from the platform committee said the word platform, we would start chanting no TPP, no TPP. And these shirts glowed in the dark, which came in very handy because every time our section protested or Washington State protested, they would turn the lights off in our section. But one of the days we were all wearing this color shirt, so we kind of glowed in the dark. And I feel like, you talk about 2015, that engaged me in electoral politics for the first time. I mean, I actually worked on Jerry Brown's presidential campaign back in 1992. I was one of his media advisors, but that was because of my background in public access cable TV. His campaign was only public access because he limited his campaign contributions to $100 or less. A lot of people don't know that. They think maybe Mike Huckabee was the first to do it, but it was actually Jerry Brown. And he was very progressive then. And by the time he became governor a second time, he had done a 180, almost like Kirsten Sinema, where, in 92, he was debating Bill Clinton on the Phil Donahue show, making the case for single payer. Fast forward to 2017, he told Anthony Rendon, who is the assembly leader, you need to hold this bill, which had already passed the Senate. You need to hold this bill in the Rules Committee. Don't embarrass me by making me veto this single payer bill. So wow, and this is what's happened. And I just felt like first it was the Occupy movement. And then the Bernie movement was if Occupy believed in political candidates, which they didn't, Bernie would be the one because he championed all the issues. And I just got so disillusioned that, like I said earlier in the show, in 2017, I just left the party. And now I just kind of cover it. You know, all my friends that are running for office, I like to have them on my show. I certainly support them. We talked about an Occupy diversity of tactics. So Dem enter, Dem exit. You know, I'm all for it. I supported the People's Party at first. But basically, I've always been about, you know, nonviolent. Chris Hedges is sort of my muse, and nonviolent civil disobedience, like what you're doing at Line 3 in Minnesota. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because quite frankly, to bring this back around to the climate, you know, it was very disappointing when I had Varshini Prakash on my show a couple of years ago. And I said, would you, you know, she had just done that demonstration outside of Pelosi's office, that performative thing with AOC. And I said, would you get your young people to, you know, block pipeline construction the way the tar sands blockade people did with the Keystone South? And she said, no, we're not going to do that. And I kind of think it has something to do with the foundation funding. That's what happens with a lot of these big green groups. They get foundation funding, and a lot of these foundations are started by people that have, you know, interests in fossil fuels, if you really drill down to it. And I don't know if you know this, Joey, but Sunrise did not sign the letter that 650 organizations signed about the clean electricity plan, because they said, no, it's not clean if it has nuclear, it's not clean if it has biomass, and it's not clean if it has that bullshit technology, carbon capture and sequestration, which, by the way, is the only thing that Manchin is supporting naturally, because it allows them to continue to extract. So why don't you talk a little about what I think is the only thing that we can do to save human civilization, which is what is being done right now with Line 3.
So Sunrise may have not have signed on to that, but they've signed on to the petition that asked Biden and the Army Corps of Engineers to actually stop Line 3. And this line itself, you know, it comes from the stolen lands of the First Nation of Canada, the Indigenous people over in Canada. Over in Alberta, it flows onto the main Clipper line, hits 3 going into North Dakota, and then bounces into Minnesota on 3, moves over to Line 5 in Michigan, goes up to Canada, back onto Line 9, and then over to, if I remember right, it's St. George, put onto a tanker and then shipped over to China. So this oil is not even for U.S. consumption in the first place, and the pipelines themselves go over Indigenous sovereignty land in numerous different points. Currently, we have over, I want to say about 13 to 14 different frack out sites with numerous frack out locations on there. And what a frack out is when you do a horizontal directional drilling, the water / mud and chemical solution that they use to lubricate the drill itself hits a pocket of loose soil and starts seeping out. And that fluid in there, that chemical mix, we don't know what is in that chemical mix because of, you know, trade laws on the different chemicals. Different companies sell different kind of lubricating chemicals for drill out, for horizontal directional drilling. And we've seen, as we've had a drought throughout the whole entire summer, when we did get some rain, we see the chemicals coming up to the surface level and killing the greenage in those frack out areas. If you follow, you know, the stopline3.org website, and then along with MN350, Ron Turney has been giving out some great footage and pictures of the frackouts that are happening currently to this day. There are a current pending lawsuit and investigation pending criminal charges on Enbridge for a frackout into an aquifer earlier this year that they passed their deadline on putting a hole in that aquifer. The aquifer itself is leaking over 50,000 gallons of water a day into the surrounding areas.
but I'm interested more in talking about the opposition because we all know that in I guess it was 2016, Standing Rock, captured the attention of the nation, and people made pilgrimages from all over to Standing Rock. And I did a show the year after about Chaco Canyon, which was a beautiful historic site in New Mexico where they were about to be fracking. And I was saying, well, everybody's left Standing Rock. Maybe we can get everybody to migrate to New Mexico. And they were saying, well, it's not really going to work because there's not an airport nearby and there's no place where you can camp there. It's very desolate, da, 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 da. And I'm just kind of thinking like all these protests are so fragmented. I'm just wondering what kind of effect they're having, because the things that I've been reading in the news have not been good. Nobody seems to be stopping anything, but they are putting their bodies on the line. That's for sure.
Well, Lauren, let me remind you that the KXL was stopped due to the divestment push on it. So the Keystone.
The Keystone North.
Yes.
But the South was fast-tracked, and they
Correct.
did a workaround because they knew what was going to happen. So they did a workaround with these other pipelines.
And then as for the opposition of Line 3, well, it's the Democrats. The Line 3 has been Tarzan Timmy's, Governor Waltz, his pet project. And the Enbridge PAC itself has been a funding mechanism for the DFL within Minnesota for the last decade. So this is a Democratic project, and that's why it's hard for us to actually get any leverage in the state, because we're fighting the party that's supposed to be our friends. Yeah. And then we're also fighting the Republicans who are being duped by Tarzan's Timmy and the oil tycoons to follow suit. When honestly, Enbridge has been funneling money into Democratic campaigns against Republicans in the state. It's hilarious on how this turned out, because over in North Dakota, where I'm originally from, I'm a Anishinaabe from the Turtle Mountains. It was a Republican government over there against the Native Americans, and it was, Democrats supporting the indigenous and the Republicans hitting the Democrats for supporting the indigenous. Here in Minnesota, where I moved over the last 3 years, it's been an all-out war against my local unit versus the indigenous population that surrounds my little town that I live in. We have 3 reservations that surround Bemidji itself. That's where I reside. And it's hard for us to get a voice at the table, because the unit itself and units across Minnesota Congressional District 7 have been blocking indigenous voices at the table itself and trying to push any progressives away from the table. And we've seen this action across the country with Democratic units. And
now, is anything better since Deb Haaland became Secretary of the Interior?
Where is Auntie Deb? Where is Auntie Deb? I've not seen her in action. We're looking for her. Yeah. People versus the Fossil Fuels Action Week. There was 10 indigenous nations represented when they went in and sat down peacefully in the Department of Interior, begging Deb to come out, singing Red Rover, bring Auntie Deb right over. And we're where is Deb Haaland? Where is Peggy Flanagan?
They co-opt these people. They put them in, and we thought, I'm waiting to see what happens with antitrust, because one of the things I did an early show with Zach Carter from the Huffington Post on his economic appointments, and with Dave Dayen about some of his other appointments, and he did put in some very good people with antitrust. Their names are escaping me right now, but what's her name? Lena Khan, who is going to be cracking down on Facebook. And we're going to see how much cracking down gets done. I mean, the sad thing is we've had laws about monopolies in this country for years, and and Zephyr, right.
And Zephyr. Yeah. I've been going through this book, and it covers a lot of great stuff. And my district itself is a agricultural district. We get our economy, our staple economy is agriculture. And it infuriates me because I know our family farms are followed into that chickenization of their industry. And then we see that Governor Walz is telling us farmers that, there's nothing but rocks and cows over here. But we have strong pockets. Well, excuse me, we have strong communities of leftist and progressive folks. It's just we have a loud, outspoken, small amount of active Republicans that like to, use threat and intimidation in this area.
Yeah. Well, I think we've gone on. I'm sounding like Joe Biden. We've gone on long enough. It's 9:15.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't to say anything else.
Yeah, but you haven't talked in a while, Keaton. You wanna close us out here?
Sure. I hate to black pill the audience any further, but what the thing that's been on my mind recently is, we had Lauren, our mutual friend, Anis Shivani on the show for our election night watch party last year, and we had him on for a special year-end show that we did at the end of 2020. And he was basically just advocating for disengagement, just let it all go to hell. And I'm not one of those guys to do that. However, I've been thinking more about that lately, and we are going to have Anis back on our show soon. And if I'm misquoting him or misinterpreting what he said here, he can let me know. Certainly not my intention to do that. But I think it's an important question to see, as these negotiations go on, paid medical leave out, paid family leave, maternity leave out. We're one of 8 countries on earth that does not provide this at this point. We're still the only country on earth, the only first world country on earth not to guarantee healthcare at this point. We will not spend $9 billion a year on tuition-free community college. Forget about four-year colleges. We won't finance community college for $9 billion a year when we spend $750 billion a year on the military.
When we're not even in a war with anyone.
Exactly.
As much as Biden is trying to go to war with China.
The point that I think Anis was getting at, and I think is more valid than a lot of us activists, commentators, writers want to admit, want to reckon with, want to deal with, is that at a certain point, the country becomes so intrinsically bad that it becomes immoral to root for its success. How do you root for a country's success that will not finance community college for $9 billion a year when it spends $750 billion a year on the military? Is that a country that deserves to thrive, that deserves to succeed? Is this a population that deserves community college if it sleepwalks through its own demise like this? I think he has a very strong point. No, it doesn't. And I don't want to reckon with that. I know none of us want to. That's an uncomfortable thought. But at a certain point, you have to say, this is over. This is done. We're just playing out the end game here.
Yeah.
And the question right now is, are we going to play out the end game with a little bit of integrity, a little bit of self-respect, and a little bit of credibility so that maybe down the line we can salvage a little bit for ourselves, for our kids, and for our grandkids? Because big picture here, the ship has sailed. It's sailed. It's over. It's over. It's done. And if there is no better metaphor for that decline than these negotiations over an infrastructure bill in the wake of a once-in-a-century pandemic, we are still not willing to give paid medical leave. What are we doing here? What are we rooting for here? What are we building towards here? It's over. It's done. It's done. This is about making life a little bit better for ourselves, our kids, and our grandkids. It's all we can do at this point. I Godspeed to everyone who's working their ass off. Joey, I applaud you. I don't know how you conjure up the spirit to do it. I can't. All I can do is sit behind my microphone like a little chicken shit and comment and give hot takes and make jokes and things like that. I don't have what it takes to get involved and try and right the ship because I don't think it can happen. I
You know
don't
what
think
I
it can
did?
happen.
You know what I did last week? I paid for two people, my trans friend Claire Clark and her escort, to go into a Republican fundraiser here in Buncombe County where Madison Cawthorn was speaking and disrupt the shit out of that thing. And the woman I was corresponding with about the tickets, she was like, I don't see this person's name. This person, Joshua Blankenship, he's a Democrat if he lives in Candler. And I'm like, oh no, Joshua Blankenship lives in Morganton. That's a different Joshua Blankenship. So she says, yes, well, you can understand, Lauren, we don't want any disruptions here. She automatically assumed when I said that I was from California that I would, she said, oh, I see you're another Californian fleeing that horrible state, you know, like it was so liberal or something like that. I didn't say anything. But then she sent me this email at the next day. She wrote, you fooled me once. Don't contact me again, as if I would ever want to contact the Republican Party. And then I promptly canceled the check for $200 because after all, they kicked them out. So, you know, they shouldn't be paid for that, right? But nothing, crickets, you know. What happened was the Democratic candidate that's running against Madison Cawthorn, the leading candidate here in Asheville, lesbian minister, she decided she was going to have, you know, Beers with Jasmine, the event was called. At the same day, she said, hate is coming to our community, because he was speaking with with Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who's African-American, by the way, a very Republican African-American guy who called trans people filth and said they were the Antichrist. I mean, horrible remarks. So instead of, you know, having a protest in front of this hotel and saying, you know, fascists and bigots are not welcome in Asheville, they decide to have this demobilizing event where they got everybody, you know, having beers with the Democratic candidate who has no shot in hell in NC 11, which is, you know, you have little liberal Asheville surrounded by 9 other counties that are all rural Republican evangelicals, you know. They're like, and Madison Cawthorn, he came out in the Rolling Stone the other day that he was part of the group that was planning with the insurrectionists. So I digress. I'm like Joe Biden. I digress. But I want to thank you guys for coming on, and it's great to meet you, Joey.
Laura, can I have about 5 minutes?
5
minutes. I can talk, you know.
3 minutes. 3
3
minutes.
minutes. Okay, Keaton, so how I make it through
Why don't we be moderates and give him 4 minutes?
Okay.
In the spirit of compromise.
Miigwech, which means thank you. So Keaton, I get through the day because, you know, I'm Native American. And in our culture, we call this time the 7th generation. And we're here to overcome the black snake. And a lot of people misconstrue the black snake as just the pipelines, but in Native American culture, it's more than just the pipelines. It's that colonist, capitalist mindset that we see our families and our neighbors as just financial and capital. And we're here to come together as the 7th generation, the Rainbow Coalition, to overcome that black snake. And I was working last year for Rock the Vote Native Style here in Minnesota. We turned out over 9,000 new Indigenous voters here in Minnesota. It was amazing. After work one day, I was sitting there with my good friend and my mentor, Nancy Bolio. And I was complaining about all the walking we had did that day. And she interrupted me and she said, Joey, you are too young to be complaining like an elder. And I was like, oh, okay, oh, wow. So we continued our conversation and we started talking about the things that we had to do later on we had to do the next day. And I started whining about all the stuff that we had to do. And she interrupts me and Nancy says, Joey, you are too old to be complaining like a youngin'. And I was a little bit hurt right there because I'm 33 years old. I'm not that old. I'm not. And I was like, Nancy, okay, I am too old to be considered a youngin' and I'm too young to be considered an elder. What am I? And she said, Joey, you are a helper. That is the stage of life that you are in. You are here to help our communities. You're here to help overcome that black snake. And that's who we all are in this stage of life. Excuse me if you're out there and you're listening and you're an elder or an elder in training, but that's who the majority of us are here. We're here to help, and we're here to help overcome that black snake. And that is what drives me. Because when I'm out here organizing for our revolution, Minnesota, our revolution, Bemidji, Project for a Change, Honor the Earth, what have you, I'm here engaging with my communities and helping those single mothers, those families, make those long-term memories, and not have to worry about having to pay out of their pockets for a meal to do so. And that's what makes my day. And that's why I do what I do, is for our community.
Well, you just ended the show on a helpful note. We are helpers, and I want to thank you both for being on. I want to thank everybody for watching. I like this format. I want to start inviting more viewers onto future shows. And I want everybody to contact their representative tomorrow and tell them to vote no on both of these bills. And if they vote yes on this bill, I've pledged, and I plan to honor my pledge, that I am not going to focus on national politics ever again. And I'm just going to work, what I can do locally. And I just want to close my show the way I always do, by telling everybody to keep fighting. Oops, I got my finger here. Keep fighting. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Lauren.
Gigawagaman.